Excellent. I'm Eric, and
I'm Heather.
welcome to another PreEngaged Hindsight interview. This year, our theme is Hindsight, and we're connecting with some of our previous couples with whom we've worked. Today, our guests are Chris and Katherine Marlin, and are currently living in Cincinnati, Ohio. They completed our pre-engagement counseling program in December of 2012, our premarital counseling program in May of 2013, and were married in June of 2013. Thank you for joining us today. Are you ready to begin?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Would you tell us a little bit about yourselves and provide us a brief background on how and when you met, when you started dating, and your engagement story?
Okay. So obviously I'm Katherine. This is Chris. So we met in college. We both went to Indiana University and yes, he's repping IU. We were both in the business school. So I was accounting major, he was finance. And then we both were involved with Campus Crusade for Christ. So kind of through both those avenues, we crossed paths a lot. And then finally our junior year had a conversation more than just, hey. And
she came up to me.
Yeah, it's true.
For the record.
He always brings that up. I only went over to him because one of my sorority sisters had told me that he thought I was cute. So I had the confidence to go up to him.
So both of you had that joint initiating effort. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So it was a mutual effort. So we started talking our junior year of college, and knew right away pretty much that we liked each other. Just we had really good conversations. I was a new believer, and we were talking about stuff in the Bible, and I was like, oh wow, this is really attractive to talk about this with a guy and like just have a good back and forth. So so it was pretty quick from there. We started dating, and that was, I guess, spring of 2011, and then ended up getting married in June of 2013 after going through pre-engaged counseling and premarital counseling. So our engagement story, so this was really great. I did not think that so we'd finished pre-engagement counseling in maybe November or something.
I got the green light to propose.
Yeah, got the stamp of approval. And I did not think, because he hadn't really asked me about rings or anything. He had asked one of my friends, I guess, and my friend was asking me, but I thought she was kind of just like asking me for fun. So I did not think that he was going to propose, but we were on a trip in Aruba because my parents have a timeshare there. And all my friends were like, oh, he's going to propose there. I'm like, no, I don't think he has a ring. Like this, yeah, I don't think he's ready. Come to find out, he did propose there. He took me on a walk on the beach and had just different things that he read. And yeah, just about, like stories from dating and comparing that to his commute, which sounds kind of boring, but it was cool. Yeah, so it was a neat proposal, and it was out on like the water while the sun was setting, and there's a great picture from it. So
yeah, her dad has a great camera, and so they were all like hiding along the way, and he took a picture that has borderline made me famous. It looks like the greatest proposal ever.
Wow, that's awesome.
That is awesome. We need to see that.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so what primarily influenced you to commit to the pre-engagement and premarital counseling services we offered, and 7 years later, are you still glad you made that investment?
So we from kind of a couple that was mentoring us, like staff members with Crew, Brandon and Megan, we were meeting with them saying, we feel like we want to get married. We don't feel like it's yet, and so we don't really know what to do right now. And he mentioned, I think there's pre-engagement counseling or pre-engagement books that you can read through that might help you guys get prepared. So I literally did a Google search, pre-engagement counseling or pre-engagement books, and the first website that came up was preengaged.com. So I clicked on that, and that was you guys. And yeah, so we read about it, and we're like, this seems like a great investment, because we did feel like we were ready, but we just didn't feel like God had given us the go-ahead quite yet. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and totally worth the investment. obviously biased even talking to you, but we tell, so I'm a pastor, and so I do a lot of weddings, and there's two things I require. One of them is you've got to go through like real, actual counseling if I'm going to marry you, because who knows how it would have turned out. I think we would still be okay, but we found so much benefit in going through counseling before marriage, and I think even before engagement, because that is in some ways the bigger decision to move forward. And so absolutely worth it. I require everyone, I talk about counseling as like, you've got to do it before you get married.
Excellent. Yeah. Pre-engagement is so much better just because that emotional commitment hasn't been made, the rings haven't been purchased, the venue hasn't been created, the invitation hasn't been set. And so you can have that opportunity to look at each other and go, are you the right one for me? As opposed to after saying, yes, now, are you the right one for me? It's the wrong order. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
It is way easier to break up than to cancel a venue and a wedding and return a ring. So yes. I totally get that.
Yep, absolutely. Excellent. So what was your biggest surprise about marriage?
So our biggest surprise was that it was not that hard. And really because of all the counseling that we went through. So, everybody tells you marriage is so hard. The first year's terrible. Just brace yourselves. And so we were like ready for impact. And we get married June 2013. We're waiting.
First month was easy. Well, maybe it's going to be the second month. Maybe it's 6 months in.
Yeah.
And it just never got hard. And again, 7 years in, maybe it's year 8. We don't know. But that was the strange thing, is like, I think actually we might have just been ready for this, and it was okay.
Yeah. And of course there's hard aspects like anything in life. So it's not that it's all rainbows and sunshine, but yeah, having all of the conversations that we had beforehand made it just more easy to work through, and did not have this huge change that everybody kind of told us to prepare for. So that honestly is something that we say a lot to people. Like, it doesn't have to be terrible, and like your first year can be fun.
Yeah.
So.
Excellent. So other than pre-engagement and premarital programs, how did you prepare for married life?
One of the things that we did, and I don't know where I got this idea or if I made it up, but we every few months would sit down as like a dating couple and just talk about the things that weren't going well. I don't know if you watch Seinfeld. It's kind of like the airing of the grievances that they have at Festivus. So we would get together. We would have both good and bad things written down, and it was easier to tell the other person what's going well. But one of the big things was like, hey, what's not going well? We know we're going to hear hard things. We know we're going to say hard things. And the crazy thing was, at the end of those conversations, we felt more optimistic and closer to each other than before. So, that was just something we kind of had a discipline of every few months, like, let's have a hard conversation. Let's talk about what could be going better. And I think we found that there weren't that many conversations we needed to have once we got married, because we were doing those. We went through both pre-engagement and premarital counseling, and it was like, gosh, everything other than living together that could have come up has already come up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. And I think when we worked with you guys, we do recommend that practice as well. And you guys were already doing it. I'm like, this is excellent. So yeah, that's great. Did you want to add anything onto that, Katherine?
Yeah, he is always the one usually to bring up things. I shouldn't say always. I think that was something you guys taught us, to never say never and never say always. So we actually still reference that. But he usually is the one to bring things up, because I don't like conflict. So that was a good practice for me to get in, and definitely helped me feel more prepared for married life.
Excellent. Good. So how important has shared goals and shared mission in marriage been for you two?
That's been huge. And that's maybe the other thing I talk about even in like a pre-wedding talk is, gosh, if your marriage is the most, and so we're Christians. So for us, it's if your marriage is the most important relationship, then gosh, when it's not going well, your whole world is now kind of wrecked. And so love Katherine, big fan of her, but having like faith in Jesus, who is unchanging, has actually made my relationship with Katherine so much easier because gosh, she's not the most important relationship that I have, and she would say the same. And that has actually given a lot of freedom, maybe even taken some pressure off of like, okay, marriage is great. It is not the ultimate goal of existence. But gosh, it's a huge asset and it's a huge blessing in the midst of pursuing a relationship with Jesus. So we talk about that a ton. And we both love counseling and then love this idea of like, man, I think that there could be something bigger than just being married. And that's the ultimate goal of either the Christian life or just life in general.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we have actually discovered that over the years that mission is such a huge critical thing that we've restructured our entire program to where our first month is focusing mostly around the pair test and some other materials. And then the second month is focusing on building that mission and understanding your personality and your interests and your calling and putting it all together for a mission together. And then we get into more of our topical things in our third and fourth month. And so we found that to just be such the foundational framework that couples need to move forward, that if couples only do a month or do a couple months and they get those first couple of months in, they still get that foundational mission in.
Yeah. Well, one of the big things, I mean, that we have found, and we kind of just stumbled into this, or maybe we've made good steps and we didn't know, but we both have shared interests that are big things. I mean, whether it is faith or, I mean, we're big on friendships and community, but then, I mean, even right now, Katherine's in the middle of like baking croissants. So she's got her own like little missions, or she's got her own like interests, and I do too. And we haven't tried to merge everything because we are still two individual people.
Right.
And that's been great. Like Katherine is at her healthiest when she's baking and gardening, and I'm at my healthiest when I'm not. And that's fun.
You're at your healthiest when you're eating.
Yeah, exactly. That's so true.
Yeah, it's great when your mission and your interests kind of overlap like that.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Katherine?
Oh, no, he's reaping the benefits of my gardening and baking.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Excellent. Well, what is the most significant challenge you two have faced together?
So for us, in the 7 years we've been married, definitely we've been walking through infertility the last 3.5 years. So yeah, we got to a point where we're like, okay, I think we're ready, Lord, to start growing our family, and figured, it would be easy, and just when you make that choice, that then it happens. And that's not been the case for us at all. So that has been a really defining thing in our marriage, for better and for worse. I mean, there have been some really great things that have come from it. It has like brought us together to kind of go after something as a couple and intercede for and pray for, and really just ask God to move, because we believe that He is the author of life and is in control of that. So for like 3.5 years we've been earnestly praying for that, and it's brought struggles too. Like it's just hard when like each month you feel like you fail in some ways. So but there's also been just sweet moments that we both have had with the Lord through that, because we are going to Him with this thing over and over, and it's through that you kind of just grow even a deeper relationship with the Lord. So there's no happy ending to it yet. We're still waiting for God to move. And we, even before we got married, we knew that we would want to adopt or foster or something. So we're kind of in the process of, there were approved foster parents in Ohio, and are going down that route too, alongside trying to figure out the infertility stuff. But yeah, it's been a challenging thing for sure.
Yeah, I think in so many ways, easily the hardest thing that we've gone through. It is marriage related. It's not like a fight that keeps recurring. It is kind of a crisis that in some ways has like rallied us together. I mean, that's what you see in most teams as a crisis, is either going to break you apart or you're going to rally together and unite around it. And so I think thankful for like a good foundation of both pre-marriage and then 3.5 years of really healthy rhythms, that it's like, okay, this is uniting us, not dividing us. So yeah, could be so much worse, but gosh, it's been a challenge for sure.
Yeah, Heather has written about some of those same issues for us over the years in our blog, so we understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can be very, very difficult.
Yep.
Well, on the next question, have you had moments in which you wish you hadn't married, and how did you work through those moments?
Yeah. So, I know, like we were looking at the questions and it's like, oh yeah. So because I don't like conflict, basically anytime that we are in an argument, I think to myself, oh, it would just be easier if we weren't married. So that happens like.
I heard the first of this like a couple months ago, so I didn't know that was the thought.
Surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it just feels so uncomfortable to me that it's like, well, this is not worth like, let's just, why did we get married? This is terrible. I don't like being in conflict with somebody that we are, like supposed to be in good relationship with. So it feels so off, like conflict, disagreements, not being on the same page, whatever it is, even if it's something minor, it just feels so terrible to me that it makes me at times think that not being married would be easier. But at the same time, so like I think I've already said, Chris is really good about like having us talk about things that are uncomfortable and issues that are ongoing, so that we actually do address them. And on the other side of it, then it's like, oh wow, this is so much better. Like we now connect in a deeper way because we've worked through something hard. So I've totally seen the benefits of working through hard conversations and working through the conflict. So now I am more pro like addressing the conflict, still not quite as strong as he is, but I have gotten to a place where I'm more comfortable with it, and I don't think as often not being married would be easier. So
Progress
is important, day by day. Yeah.
And it's not like particular to him. Like I think with any close relationship, it's just like, oh, this is difficult. But yeah.
Heather recently wrote a very sobering, very honest post about whether she should have married me. And it's interesting. One of her conclusions was really evaluating whether you should get married at all. Like, do you want to enter into that institution of marriage? Why so? Regardless of the other person, and just really evaluating that. So.
Yeah, that's good.
I think, and more people are asking that question these days. And I resound with it. It's probably in those same moments that she's like, I don't want to fight. It'd be easier to not be married. I'm like, I wish I wish you would actually fight with me so we can just get past this. It'd be easier to not be married.
Yeah.
So I get it.
I can deeply resonate. The conflict thing. If he comes in and he's like, I need to talk to you about something, my whole body tenses up. I prepare for the worst. It might be like, we need to move $50 from this to this, and it could be something simple, but I'm just always prepared for some like catastrophic. And I have the same, like, I want to be anywhere but here. How can I run away? Maybe I shouldn't have done this. And then 10 minutes later, I'm like, oh, I love him so much. So I get it. I really do.
Excellent. Well, what one thing do you each remember from our sessions as being particularly helpful for your relationship?
Steak and mac and cheese.
Yes. Do you want to expound on that?
Oh, I wasn't prepared to. No, we do, because we talk about this stuff with people getting married. We do reference steak and mac and cheese a lot. So it was your introduction into a realistic view of what the sex life might be like, where Hollywood, even, you know, distortions all over are going to say it's always going to be steak, or it's going to be this like long drawn out romantic process that, yeah, is just so wonderful and intimate, when in reality you eat mac and cheese more than you eat steak, and it makes steak all the more enjoyable.
Yeah.
But the reality is that more often mac and cheese is just, yeah, a healthy sex life is both the long drawn out and the like, oh, this is something that we do as married couples.
Yep. Excellent.
You okay?
That's all I learned.
We talk a lot about the pair test. So
We talk more about the pair test than mac and cheese.
But yeah, the pair test, where you're analyzing all these different aspects of your relationship and where do you plot comparatively to each other, that was super helpful. We did that in pre-engagement counseling. And we reference that still in our own marriage, and then even like sharing with other people how having something objective to look at was super helpful for us. So it kind of removed some emotion from it. And I remember you guys saying like, neither one of these is wrong. It's just, you have to understand that he's here and you're here, and this will create tension. So that has still been very beneficial to us in helping to understand each other and learn how to communicate better.
Excellent.
Go
ahead.
I was gonna say, I think we could have figured some of those things out over years, and it would have taken years of like conflict and like, oh, I didn't realize. I mean, the big thing for us was like, I love to lead, she loves to follow, so that's great. But there's times that I'd rather follow and she doesn't like to lead. And how would we have ever put language to that? I mean, that's the one thing that we go back to of like, oh man, a test showed us something that we might have never been able to put language to. And so the pair test was unbelievably helpful for us.
Yeah, that's why we often tell people, you know, this will jumpstart your relationship. It give you insight like 3 to 5 years into marriage, that you don't have to go through all that conflict to figure out these things. And some people are like, really? And I'm like, no, really? Like,
Really?
honestly, no.
Yeah.
So it's an amazing assessment.
Yeah.
Excellent. So what advice do you have for other couples who are considering marriage?
Don't screw it up. I mean, really, like, you want to these are one of the things that you want to get right the first time. And even like liking it to a house. I mean, I will give you guys just another plug of like, do your homework and make sure that you're having like, so we're in our first house. We had an inspector look at it because I know enough to be dangerous, or maybe a little bit less than enough to be dangerous. And it's like, this guy's crawling in everywhere. And he's like, yep, looks like it's livable. I feel so much better about this house because we had an outside, non-emotional expert look at it. And so in the same way, it's like, gosh, I am the biggest fan of marriage, but it's really something that you want to make sure that you choose well. And I think outside, I mean, if you're not processing that decision with anybody else, that's probably a red flag. Mm-hmm. Because I would process buying a new car with like a good friend or an expert, much less like an actual marriage.
Yeah. Excellent. Katherine?
Yeah, I mean, similar, like having someone validate our relationship, and also just not rushing into anything. I think it was really helpful that we thought we were going to get married, but we didn't take that next step until we did have a peace from the Lord that it was right. And the pre-engagement kind of filled that gap there, which was one of the best decisions we've made. So so I would say not rushing into anything, but really taking the time to pray if you do pray, and ask if that's right, but also getting outside opinions.
And maybe not assuming that the little fights that are happening now will just go away because you'll get to live together or you'll get to be married. I mean, those will only be magnified in the same house. And so it doesn't mean that they're bad. Just process through them and figure out why they are recurring.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the analogies that I've heard is, if you're having a hard time bench pressing 70, don't add 200 pounds of marriage onto it.
Yeah.
like get through the ability to handle the easier stuff before adding this big huge thing on top of it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, last question. In hindsight, how did you know that the other person was the one for you?
Another plug, you guys told me that I'd know when I stopped asking myself. And I realized, still remember I was sitting at Don Pablo's, which, rest in peace, has gone out of business. But I was with my family. It was like over Thanksgiving break in college. And I was like, they were talking about Katherine. What do you think? And I'm like, well, man, I haven't asked myself if she's the one in like 2 months. And I was like, I think that means she's the one. Like I stopped processing like, oh, can I put up with that? Oh, I do really like this about her. That was a really great moment for me of like, oh man, I haven't really had the doubts. I've just kind of been assuming the course because it seems now more obvious than like a real question.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah. I mean, I remember that same thing with you.
Not at Don Pablo's though.
Not at Don Pablo's, but you saying that you would stop asking. And yeah, I think and again, like we prayed and we felt like the Lord did say that we were right for each other and that this was our spouse. And there was just this waiting period of doing the counseling. So that combined with just not really asking and kind of assuming like, yeah, this is great. We're operating well as a couple and feel like God is calling us to this. So yeah, there was little doubt in my mind.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us for another Hindsight PreEngaged interview. We're so happy to catch up with you guys.
Yeah,
And hopefully it won't be another 7 years before we see you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having us. This was fun.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
See you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.